Hello friends, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. If you've been here a while, I'm sure you know by now that I like to plan ahead for meals to make my week run a little bit smoother. Now this can look different for everybody, but one thing that I like to usually focus on is breakfast and lunch because that is our busiest time. I'm usually available to make dinners. There are times where I like to make dinners ahead of time, but for the most part, I like to prepare meals for our busier times. So today I'm sharing with you some of the meals that I have made recently to make my life a little bit more easier. I'm starting off in the kitchen today making a chocolate chip espresso muffin. This is a new-ish recipe to me. I've made something very similar, just not this exact recipe. So I'm trying this one out today. It sounded delicious. The only thing I was kind of going back and forth with was when I read over the instructions for it ahead of time, they seemed a little bit like finicky. I don't know how to say. So it just seemed like I didn't understand why we were going back and forth and moving like the temperatures of the oven when we were baking them, and it just seemed like more effort than I like to put in the morning. So we will see how they turn out. I'm sure they will turn out just fine, but yeah, that's one thing that I was kind of testing, because on a busy morning, the last thing I want to do is be in the kitchen every couple of minutes adjusting the oven temperature and kind of setting a timer and just all that kind of stuff in the middle of doing everything else I'm already doing in the morning. So we'll see how they turned out, but I did end up making a large batch of these, and so they can be put into the freezer and we can kind of pull them out just ever so often, however many we want, defrost them, and just eat them like that. So I wanted to make a large batch that we could put in the freezer. I will have this recipe along with the other recipes from today's video down below in the description box if you would like to try any of them. I know it's very common for people to spend like an entire Sunday, for instance, or Monday or whatever the day may be during the week or on the weekend, doing an entire like weekly prep or freezer prep, or, you know, doing a big meal prep type of thing. However, I find that a little difficult. There are days, sure, where I do that, but for the most part, I find it very difficult to stay with that. I am one that I usually will have little pockets of time throughout the day in between school and stuff like that. And so I like to get stuff done in those little pockets of time. So that is usually what I like to do. I like to prep one thing during a pocket each day. So you'll see throughout the week is when I am prepping these meals. You'll see my outfits are changing and stuff like that, because that is pretty much what I'm doing. During my pockets every day I come in, I'll make something that I can either put in the fridge or freezer, make ahead of time. I'll start dinner, you know, whatever it may be. I do it in those little pockets instead of devoting an entire day to it. That's just something that works a lot better for me in the stage of life that I'm in. So I know that there are people that like to plan and do an entire day of it. I'm just not one of those people often. There sure are days where I do it, but more often this is a lot easier for me to manage. So back to these muffins, I was supposed to fill the batter, like skipping every one, because I guess they rise a lot in the oven, and so to prevent them from sticking to each other, I was supposed to, you know, kind of alternate them. However, I forgot as I was doing that, and I think I had some kids talking in my ear and, you know, all that fun stuff of being a mom, and I got distracted, and then I ended up not separating them like I was supposed to. I forgot that I wasn't supposed to be putting them all in, and I put this one here and it wasn't supposed to be added. So they're all together, and I guess you're supposed to like skip and only have half of them in at a time because of that, but I mean, I don't really care. But anyway, that is why they're not all filled. And like I said, it was odd because you're supposed to preheat your oven to 425 and only have them cook at 425 for 5 minutes. And then you're supposed to adjust your temperature down to 350 and cook them. It said 10 to 12 minutes at 350. I did a 10-minute timer and then checked it and they still weren't done. So I ended up doing 12 minutes at 350. That just, it seems like a lot me checking on the muffins, especially like busy mornings. I don't know how well that's gonna do. So anyway, like I said, I'm just kind of testing these out. We haven't even tried them, so I will let you know for sure if they're any good. I mean, they're filled with chocolate, so I'm assuming they're really good. Here's how the muffins turned out. This is actually only half the batch, so it did make a really large batch that I was able to put in the freezer. But like I said, they're filled with chocolate and they were absolutely delicious. My kids love these and they were really great right out of the freezer too. So it's something that you can make ahead of time and pull out of the freezer during your busier times. I also made a batch of strawberry jam. This is something that I've made on my channel before. If I can find the video, I'll link it below. This is a wonderful recipe, my family's absolute favorite. So I did make this the day before. I let all the jars rest for about 12-ish hours, and then I'm testing all of the seals now to make sure they've all sealed. I don't know if it's just my Aldi or if other Aldis also do this, but there are different times throughout the year where their strawberries go on sale for really, really cheap, like 99 cents for one of their pints. So whenever they do that, I will go in and stock up, and then that is when I make a large batch of the strawberry jam. So they had just went on sale, and I took advantage of that, got several of the quarts, and made some strawberry jam for our pantry, which we had just run out, so it ended up working out. We are moving right along to our next recipe. Now, this is primarily a breakfast recipe, but my kids love it all day long. And my oldest son, this is one of his favorites, so he will even have it like for dessert and stuff. I did not know because usually it's gone pretty quickly, but I had a very sweet subscriber let me know that this bread freezes very well. So I'm going to make a batch of it. It makes 2 loaves of this cinnamon Amish bread, and I'm going to put 1 in the freezer and then 1 I'll serve for breakfast. I always tell you this every single time I make this recipe on my channel, but this recipe I have been making for maybe 15 years. I started this when my oldest were so little, like little babies, and it was because I was so intimidated by making bread. And so, but I really wanted to bake. I was a new stay-at-home mom and I was just trying to figure things out. This was a recipe that I was able to make without having a mixer because I didn't have one back in those days. And I didn't need, the bread machine. I didn't have to use yeast. So I found this recipe and I have been making it for the last 15 years. I was so proud of myself too in those early days because, like I said, I was very intimidated by like bread recipes. And this is a little bit different. This is almost like, like a banana bread, but it's cinnamon sugar. But this was one of the first ones that I was able to do, and it turn out so incredible every single time. So I have made this bread so many times over the years, and I always share that story with you guys just so you know that this is a tried and true recipe. This is one that has kept around for so long, and I'm really happy to know now that I can put it in the freezer and have some for later. I actually do have a loaf currently in my freezer that I don't think my kids actually know about. I think if they knew that it was there, they would have taken it out by now and already eaten it. But just so you know, if you are like I was back in the day where you're intimidated by baking or bread, or I think it was pretty much like yeast at the time. I had no idea. I've never worked with that back in the day. And so I was very intimidated by most bread recipes. So if you are like I was and you're intimidated by a lot of like this baking or you're new to it, just know this recipe is incredibly easy and it is very, very hard to mess up. So this is a really great one to start with. I have the batter all mixed together, so now I'm going to start layering them in these bread pans. Now I did grease the pans, and then I also used some parchment paper to line them. It makes it so incredibly easy, one, to clean up afterwards, but it also makes it very easy to take the bread out. Oftentimes it will try to stick in the bottom of the pan even if you grease it really well. So this parchment paper is definitely a game changer. So I have that lined, and I'm going to be putting, I put about a quarter of the batter in each one of these pans, and then I spread it evenly across the bottom. Then I'll go in with a cinnamon sugar mixture, which I will generously sprinkle over top of this layer. Then I will put another quarter of a layer in each pan to top the cinnamon sugar layer with. Then you'll see me swirl it in and top the bread again with it. I have 2 layers of the batter in each of these pans, and then 2 layers of the cinnamon sugar mixture in both of these pans as well. And what I'm doing is I just take a knife to make the cinnamon swirls. I put it all the way in the batter and just kind of swirl it around, do zigzags. I don't want to overdo it, because the top layer on this makes a really wonderful crust after you bake it. So I want to incorporate it enough to make cinnamon swirls inside the bread, but I want to also keep a lot of the sugar and cinnamon on top for that really nice crust. Here is how the bread looks before it goes in the oven. I often do say though that you'll have to kind of base your baking time just checking on it. I will often take like a knife and stick it through the center. If it comes out with any batter on it, I put it back in. I feel like that can kind of change from time to time as well. You'll feel like it is getting overcooked, but that is just the crust that is forming over top. This is how it ended up turning out. Like I said, one of my tried and true favorites, and this one is sure a hit in my house. This next recipe isn't necessarily a recipe, it's just something that I kind of threw together. But I wanted to do some chicken tacos in the freezer. They are so super easy, especially if you wrap them individually, to pull out for like a quick lunch. This is something that if my husband is working at the shop, he can easily take this out of the freezer that morning, put in his lunchbox, and be able to easily heat it up. These are also usually a pretty big hit, and I like making these when I have a bunch of ingredients in my fridge that I kind of want to get rid of, I want to use up. So this recipe isn't necessarily a recipe because I kind of use different ingredients each time depending on what I have, what I'm trying to get rid of. This time it actually was a rotisserie chicken. My Walmart will have the rotisserie chickens like in the cold section by the meat and stuff. They have, some in the warmers too, but the ones in the cold section are only like $3. So I like to scoop a couple of those up, and I use the bones for broth, and then I'll use the meat for various things. I had 2 in the fridge at this point, and I had one that I was using for a recipe. The other one I didn't really know what to do with, so I making some chicken burritos for the freezer. Now what I did was I just started off by shredding up the rotisserie chicken. I put it into this big bowl, and then I seasoned it really well with a bunch of different taco seasonings. If you have a mix, you can use that. I usually will have just stuff that I throw together on hand. So like chili powder, cumin, garlic, onion powder, stuff like that. I like to throw together and just make the seasoning myself. You can also do it like that to where like my husband, sometimes he has trouble with like acid reflux and stuff. And I feel like it helps when you're making it yourself. You can kind of regulate how you're wanting to do it. If you want it spicier, you could add in spicier things. If you don't, you can omit them. So I like making it myself just so I can kind of really know exactly what I'm putting in and be able to adjust it as needed. So I have the chicken in here. I also did do a block of cream cheese that I melted up. That's not something I always do, but it added a really nice touch and my kids really liked it. So I added that in, and then I added in about 1/4 cup of salsa. Again, you can adjust all of these things. This recipe is not necessarily a recipe, so do whatever you want, but so I did that, and then I added in some shredded cheese. Now I'm just putting them in these tortillas. I used flour, however, corn would be delicious too. I'm going to stuff all of the tortillas, and then I'm lining them on this parchment lined baking sheet, and I'll put them in the oven after I brush them with some oil. Now I originally called these taquitos, and I think the recipe that I had was kind of investigating. I didn't follow it, but I was looking at it. They called them taquitos. However, I think theirs were smaller, and my daughter, whenever I was making these and referred to them as taquitos, she was like, "That is not a taquito." So I'm like, "Well, I guess you're right." But anyway, so they were really, really good. Whenever I made these for lunches, I pulled a certain amount out for my kids, and then I would make just a really easy guacamole, or pull out some salsa, sour cream, anything like that they wanted, and they dipped them in these. They ended up being a really easy thing to throw together and then have for, whenever we wanted them, but they were really delicious coming right out of the freezer too. I think if you were looking for quick meals to do during summer break or anything, this would be a really good one to prepare ahead of time and then be able to take out of the freezer on those busy summer days. You don't always have to cook them ahead of time, but I really liked the added touch. It added a flavor that is a little different when you don't cook them ahead of time. It added a better flavor. So like I said, I'm just brushing them with some olive oil, and then I'm going to pop them in the oven just for them to start browning, and then I'll pull them out to let them cool down before I put them into a bag in the freezer. Another thing that I feel like is so easy and like a no-brainer, but also a complete lifesaver is frozen pizzas. So I am going to be making 3 frozen pizzas. I actually made 4, but we had that 4th one for lunch this day. So my dough that I make, it makes 2, and so I was doubling the dough to make 4. I also will have the dough recipe down below. This is one that I have made so many times. It is a really great, like, it's not too thin, it's not too thick, it's nice and crunchy. It's I don't know, perfect all the way around for how I like it and my kids like it. I know that people like different consistencies of, you know, doughs and stuff, but for this one is our favorite, and it makes a really good amount. So very easy to throw together. I'm throwing the ingredients together, and then I'll let the dough rise before I put it on the baking sheets. Now, just a little tip, if you do not have the time to let it rise, I do know that this dough still works because I have been in those situations. It just turns out better when you do let it rise, of course. So, but if you don't have that time, you can ultimately just go ahead and make the pizza. These are so easy, and I know that you can obviously just do them from the store, but if you're wanting to control your ingredients and make these whenever, it's a very easy thing to do. These were such a lifesaver when I was recovering from my surgery. I still am recovering, but in the very, very early days of recovery, these were such a lifesaver because when my husband went back to work, my kids could easily just go pull these out of the freezer and put them in the oven and have a really easy lunch or dinner. It was something that I did not have to get up and help them with. And so I was really grateful that I had done these in the freezer ahead of time. So I let the dough rise, and I'm going to divide it. Like I said, each of these dough balls I'm going to end up dividing into 2. So I'll end up with 4 total. But one of these I'm going to put aside to go in the freezer. The other one I'm going to make for lunch. And you'll see me, I'm just kind of rolling them up. I got all of the air pockets out and just kind of getting them going before I put them onto the baking sheet. I am doing the one for lunch is going to be on the square pan here, and I have it very oiled with olive oil so it doesn't stick. Once I have it all spread out, I poke holes in it with a fork just to prevent, you know, bubbles and stuff from forming. And then I'm going to put it into the oven to start baking before I put the toppings on. Now, this is also something I do when I'm also throwing them in the freezer. So these 3 pizzas here are all ones that I'm going to wrap and put in the freezer, but I also will pre-bake the crust before I put them in the freezer. I feel like it just really helps with it not being soggy, and it holds its shape a lot better. So I don't bake them all the way through. I pull them out of the oven once they're starting to brown, I would say. So I pulled them out and I let them cool down. Now I'm going to put the toppings on, and I'm keeping it very simple because that is how my kids like their pizza. I love my pizza with all the things on it. I love all the vegetables and all that stuff on it. I'm not a huge, like, what do they call it? Like the 3 meats or whatever they are with a ton of meats. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I love veggies on pizza. And, I just did not pass that along to my kids, apparently, because they do not. They like very simple cheese pizzas. My oldest son, he likes vegetables on his, but he will, you know, he'll forego that just so my younger ones, even my daughter, she's 14 and she does not like anything on her pizza as well. So we're keeping these all cheese. I'm going to top them and then wrap them. Once they're completely cooled down, I'll wrap them with plastic wrap and put in the freezer. I don't know if you can actually hear it, but while I'm doing this voiceover, it has been storming really bad the entire time. And we have a metal roof, so you can hear it so much better with the metal roof. But it has been raining, and it is lightning and thunder, and it's just pretty much nonstop, it feels like. So if you've heard that in the background, that is what it is. We, I think, have about like a week ahead of us of pretty bad storms. And I woke up to what I thought was a large branch falling, but it turned out it was our wrought iron table outside. We had forgotten to get the umbrella out of it and put it away the night before. So I woke up to it. It had tipped over the table. The umbrella had started going into the pool, and it was just a big mess. So we had to go out there. That's what I woke up to this morning, having to go out and fix that outside. I'm hoping that's going to be all we have from the storm, is just a bunch of wind and rain. But it always scares me because we're surrounded by so many trees and our town is so little that it's very hard for workers to get to everything, and then there's not as many of them, so it takes quite a while. So I really have my fingers crossed that we're not going to lose power and stuff here. But anyway, that's kind of what we're dealing with. We are on the front end of that right now. The last thing that I am preparing for this week is a batch of cookies. Now, what I was thinking of doing with this was just making the cookie dough and putting it like in little balls, putting them in the freezer, and then having cookie dough available to where people can pull it out and bake a couple cookies if they were wanting. However, it did not work out exactly like that, because these cookies are like so delicious that the dough doesn't get very far if I don't hurry up and make them. I will have, as soon as people know I'm making these chocolate chip cookies, they will trickle in and start stealing the dough. And my daughter, she is probably the main culprit with that. She knows that she can sneak in and she takes the dough. Also, once I got them all formed into like little dough balls for cookies, and I actually got them in the freezer. I'll show you. So I formed them all into little cookie balls, but can you see like how many were taken off of this pan? I'm trying to show you here. Like, do you see all of these missing? So that was before I even got it into the freezer. Right now, I did freeze them like this, and now that they're frozen and not going to stick together, I'm putting them into a freezer bag. So that's what I'm doing here. But even after that, not a single person ended up making cookies. All they did was they would take the dough out, they would put it in their ice cream or whatever they were doing, or just eat, popping them in their mouths. But none of them made them to actually be cookies. They were all just dough balls, but they were all enjoyed. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.